Hello everyone, as you can see behind me I have the Independence Day movie, and we're talking about its sequel, Independence Day Resurgence. It's a funny thing nowadays, we're now getting to a point in this zeitgeist where things are coming back to life, and in most cases it works, and in some cases it really doesn't. Case in point with The Force Awakens and Jurassic World. Both were successful, huge hits, and on the spectrum of critical level, Jurassic World is probably the lesser of the two. And now this year we're getting Independence Day Resurgence, and it's bringing back its director and most of the original cast members along for the ride with us. It's a thing with directors, how directors have a passion project. And some directors have a project that they've done that had made them famous. And you would think that with a film like Independence Day Resurgence, he would put a lot of effort into making it one of the coolest sequels of all time to a film that is, well, legendary. It's a legendary film, yes, but it's also very corny. But its sequel, well, it really doesn't hold up very well. The sequel involves a cast 20 years later. Society has rebuilt itself off of the technology of the aliens from the first film, and it just so happens that a new, bigger threat called the Harvester and its queen is on its way to destroy Earth, or at least take its core to be able to power its machines. Along for the ride back, we have Jeff Goldblum and most of its cast members, excluding Will Smith, as he died in a plane accident, which is one of the sins of the movie for me. Is that Will Smith was in the first movie a charismatic character. He brought a lot of charisma to the film that actually added a lot to it and made it a real worthwhile movie to watch in theaters. Unfortunately, in this movie, his role has been taken over by his fictional son, which I don't really know his name, really. I think it's Damien or whatnot. And Damien, as well as most of the new cast, I didn't give a shit about. Yeah, that's the funny thing with this sequel, is that you would think that with new characters coming up 20 years later, they would actually devote some time to develop these characters and to have them interact with the older characters to make them appealing. But the problem with this film is that it's only an hour and 40 minutes long, and within that hour and 40 minutes, we don't get a lot to really be attached to with these new characters. And some of them are just so not... They didn't jive with me at all. None of them really appeal to anything, really. And it's just, again, there was nothing for me to get attached to with the old characters. See, in the first film, they actually devoted some time to allow you to get introduced to these characters, and allowed you to be entertained by these characters. And unfortunately, the newer cast just didn't get, either A, didn't get enough screen time, B, wasn't really written that well, or C, the actors were not that great. But the blessing of this film is that there is some actual good actors in it. Jeff Goldblum, again, plays the same guy, really, that he's always been playing for years, and he's enjoyable in this film, along with his father. His father's back in this film. The old president is back in this film, and Brett Spiner is surprisingly one of the best parts about this movie. Brett Spiner brought a lot of fun comedy, but yet it kind of got old after, well, towards the end of the film. He got a little bit less funny towards the end of the film, but it still held up. There's one actual new character that I found myself kind of appealing towards, and that was the Warlord. The Warlord in this film is like, this character is like, oh, I am brave, I kill things from behind, I'm noble, that guy was kind of funny, but but aside from that, again, he has some of the same faults as some of the other new cast members. Uh, let's talk about the writing. The writing is crap. And by me saying it's crap, it's basically almost a retread of the first film, only this time it's just one large giant ship that is destroying the world. That's just it. That's really all there is. There's a lot of space fights, yes. There's a lot of really cool effects. But the problem with this film, again, is that it puts all of its cool special effects towards the front of the film. See, with Independence Day, again, the first Independence Day, it spread out those really cool special effects. And yeah, it had times when it had to slow down and let the characters rest and actually interact with each other. But this movie, the sequel to the movie, just puts almost all of its best special effects towards the front, and one really lame fight at the end that I just wasn't really invested in. And that's pretty sad, concerning that Roland Emmerich is one of the coolest disaster filmmakers around, possibly the king of disaster filmmakers. And let's talk about special effects. The special effects in this film is bigger, yes. Everything is bigger in this film, everything is badder in this film, and everything is better in this film, almost. But the problem I have with this film is that it has an over-reliance on CG. And yes, CG can be used in a very great way, in a very good way that makes things, enhanced. But when every single alien is CGI, I think it's bullshit. They had one alien okay, so here's a scene. The old president was in the interrogation room, and they bring out one of its aliens to interrogate it, because the queen is somewhat arriving, and they need to have answers as to who the hell it is. And he goes in there, and the alien is just all CG. There is no practical effects. The first movie had practical effects with stop-motion animation in parts. That's how cool it was. You didn't need to rely on CG. There was practical puppets, actual suits that people would be in that would, charge at people. But it's unfortunate that most of the aliens in this movie, at least all of them really, are CGI. Ugh. Good lord. But I do have to say that the designs are still the same as the original. They didn't really go all extravagant and go, oh, here's a new alien. The only real new alien in this film is a golf ball. No, seriously. It's just a golf ball. A giant-sized golf ball that has refugees on a planet, and it's just what the... Like, they throw in this new character. It's like, oh yeah, well, there's good aliens that want to fight back against these assholes. And the ending of this film leaves it off on a cliffhanger that I don't think a lot of people would want to see the ending of. And that's the problem, is that we want to have a good sequel to this movie, because regardless of what you think of it, Independence Day is one of the cornerstones for blockbuster films. And you'd think with a cool movie like that, it would have an even bigger and better sequel. And unfortunately, there's a lot of things wrong with the sequel that I don't think it's the best sequel ever. And it's one of the reasons why it was beaten out by Finding Dory, of all films. Independence Day Resurgence is a mixed mash of everything that was good in the first, but a lot of things that were really terrible in it. And you know that one guy in the first movie that was like, David, why'd you call my mother? Why'd you have me call my mother, David? That kind of guy? Yeah, there's two of those types of characters in this film, and they get incredibly annoying throughout the entirety of the film. Both of those characters should have died, but they never did. Screw those characters. I don't think I would ever want to see the third movie, but I think the pros of this film is that, yes, it's fun. It has some entertaining moments, and it reminds me of how fun movies used to be for blockbuster seasons. Not a lot of movies nowadays really have a fun aspect about them. Most of them are dark and gritty reboots. Most of them have to be intrinsic or very deep in its moral messages. And when I look at Independence Day, it's just a fun, goofy ride that everyone should be a part of. It's just the sequel just manages to not relive a lot of that stuff. And unfortunately, that makes the movie, in my opinion, bad. It's not the best sequel in the world, and it's not really the worst movie of the year. In fact, I'd call it a mediocre film and probably on a disappointment list. But at least I got to see it and say, yeah, it was okay, but it's still bad. It's way worse than the first film. But I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. It's a if you enjoyed the first Independence Day and you want to see the second one, fine, go right ahead. I'm not stopping you. But for me personally, I don't think I'll ever buy it on Blu-ray or even DVD for that matter. But, you know, it still has some good performances. The special effects are kind of great. And it has a really lackluster ending that kind of made my jaw drop at the end. So, until we meet next time at the movies, peace.